Well, here we are, coming down to the last week of our class, and we have covered a lot of territory. Still have a ways to go. We're going to look today at the Oliphant Book, Chapter 6. This is the final week, and I'm posting a message which I'm hoping everyone will see, that when Christina and I, that is when the people who are involved with helping us formulate these courses, first set up the quiz schedule, did not occur to me and did not occur to her until just the last few days, that we would be looking at having a quiz number 4, the same weekend as the final exam. And so we are not going to have quiz 4. Hope that doesn't bother you too much. There will be the final. It will cover the whole broad range of material, but it'll be similar to the quizzes that we've taken so far. And so no quiz this week. We will have a forum question to answer, and then come the end of this week, we are finished with the course. You do have the either book review or the review of the film and the position paper still to wrap up. And I'll give you through the weekend until Monday to get those done. If you have a problem of some kind in getting them done that quickly, let me know. So I think that kind of catches up our housekeeping stuff here now. Chapter 6 of Oliphant is walking in wisdom toward outsiders. And what he does in this chapter is the first part of it's very practical. It's very helpful. So he points us to some passages in the Bible. You sort of get this feeling that, okay, this is nice. We're kind of out of the realm of bust your head open kinds of issues related to apologetics. And then halfway through the chapter, he turns the heat up once again. So this one may have some challenge to you, but he sort of sets the challenge up when he says early in the chapter that we don't have to know everything about everything. He even confesses that he himself is not really a philosopher of science, although he does a pretty good job of convincing me otherwise in places when he picks up and deals with Dennett and Dawkins toward the end of the chapter. And we do have this long dialogue, which makes it in some ways not quite so difficult because it's not pure analytic philosophy at that point. So hopefully you will find, if you haven't read it already, that material is hard and difficult. But I don't expect you to be able to assimilate everything there. Just read the piece, see how he's going, watch the twists and turns that he makes. And he makes it very clear that he doesn't see himself as an expert on the level of, and he points to one of his colleagues here at this point, Vern Poythress, who teaches at Westminster Seminary in Philadelphia. Poythress has a PhD, I think, in math, along with a PhD in theology. Probably not a lot of fun at parties, but a very bright man. I have several of his books. All right, so walk in wisdom toward outsiders. He again quotes Bavinck. Loves the Dutch guys, doesn't he? At the outset, and it's again a pretty nice little quote. Doesn't fit very well into a Facebook post, but it's right there. And so what he wants to begin with here, after quoting a couple of passages in 2 Corinthians, is to go to Colossians, and on page 194, halfway down, he says, this entire epistle could be studied with great profit as, in the main, a defense of Christianity against false teachings and false philosophy. And I don't think I'd ever heard anyone say it quite like that, but I concur. I think he's right about Colossians. And so then he deals with a number of the philosophical issues that they were facing, admits the fact that philosophy in Paul's day was not the same as today. He mentions specifically Paul did not have to deal with neo-Kantianism or Darwinism. But Paul had plenty of his own issues to deal with in terms of people who were philosophical advocates opposed to Christianity. When he gets to Athens, he's dealing with Stoic and Epicurean philosophy, with Platonism, So there was a whole cadre of philosophies and philosophers in the Greco-Roman world in the days of the New Testament and afterwards. 2nd century and 3rd century, where the church engaged regularly in debates against many of these people. So then he takes us on a little jaunt here on page 196. It says toward the bottom, first, wisdom in Scripture is the application of biblical truth to a particular situation. He's going back and referring to the statement that Jesus had made, where he said, don't worry about the answer you will give ahead of time. Don't be anxious. And he makes, I think, a good explanation of that overall we should be prepared. But we shouldn't find ourselves fretting if we know that tomorrow we're going to be on a stage with a debate with an evolutionist and a nihilist and an existentialist, and the four of us will really go at it. Count on the fact that you know something of those issues. Count on the fact that you know the Word of God, and trust the Lord that He will give you what you need to say. This is what he calls wisdom. He says on 197, walking wisely, says Paul, we are making best use of the time. And he just quotes there again from Colossians. And Ephesians, by the way, has the same statement in Ephesians chapter 5. So he says part of what it means to be wise is to redeem the time. And I think that he's right about that. It's important for us to make sure that we spend our time wisely if we're going to be Christian professionals. I don't like that terminology, but if we're going to spend our life as teachers of the Word and helping to prepare others to be teachers of the Word, we need to make sure that we have enough study time built into our overall schedule that we prepare ourselves truly for that kind of a task and that kind of behavior. He talks about persuasion. He picks this up from the last chapter where he talked about pathos and ego, ethos and logos. Then he says he wants to talk next about scientific issues, and this is where, beginning on page, really on page 207, that he starts into his discussion of Dennett and Dawkins in doubt. Dennett's not as well known, perhaps, as Dawkins is, but Dennett certainly is one of these characters. Dennett, Dawkins, Sam Harris, these are all people whose work has been to defend atheism in a very specific and dramatic way. I've written a lot of books, along with a few others like them. But so this is where he begins to launch into, first of all, how you would prepare for that kind of dialogue, and then secondly, how the dialogue might take place. And I think he's kind of doing the right thing here. I'm not sure that Dennett would always respond, and he isn't either. He says, look, this could take all kinds of different directions, but this is how I anticipate that Dennett would respond to me if I say we presume the existence of God, or we presume theistic creation, or something like that. And so it's a nice little dialogue, though at a little different level than one or two of the dialogues that he included earlier. And he talks in the last few pages here, beginning on 218, about the difference between plausibility and probability. I think that's a good discussion you may want to take a look at. And then in his conclusion of the chapter, he talks about concluding word to the wise. Top of 222. On the negative side, we saw Dennett's view was unduly biased toward his own assumptions. And this is what you oftentimes find with people who are very, very vocal on their views. I have encountered people who are very vocal, especially when I went to secular university for a while. But then I have also found people who are not so vocal. They're just not interested, or they don't want to talk about it. But when you deal with people who are sort of have a settled position, then he does what he talked about in the last chapter, which is have a negative apologetic, and then beyond that, a positive apologetic. So, I hope this chapter will be helpful to you, even though it's not quite as practically applicable as some of the other chapters have been, but nonetheless, I think very helpful to a person studying apologetics.